So hold on just a sec. All right. Can you see on your screen right now the email that I sent out to you this morning? It says online AWD1100 C# class today, Friday. Good. All right. Well, as I mentioned in there, and if you count, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 assignments in here. And I've gotten to the point where I think that's kind of ridiculous to expect you to be able to do that in a week. So I've cut it down, as you can see. So the ones that are in here, I'm going to quickly, in just a few minutes, go over this one, this fortune cookie one. Anyone that says you do and turn in for grade means just that. All right, so for chapter 6, it'll be this college applicants, the count vowels and painting a room. All right, now this one, it says you do and turn in for grade. That's not really right. I put some asterisks afterwards. We're going to use that one later in a later assignment. So I'd like you to build it, but don't worry about turning it in. So just from chapter 6, these 3 right here, all right, and really nothing from chapter 7 except this order exceptions. Now take a look at that when you get some time, not this second, but when you get some time. And if it doesn't make sense, whether you're here, in class or you're watching this on video, just send me an email if it doesn't make sense. All right, so today I'm going to start by going over the homeworks for chapter 6 and the homeworks for chapter 7. Then when I get done, I'm going to go over the fortune cookie one for chapter 6, and I'm going to go over the BMI one for chapter 7. Anything that says something like done for, gone over as a class, or whatever, that means you don't have to turn that in. That's not part of the assignment. Anything that says not assigned, you do not have to turn in. Now, if you've been busting your hump and you've already got these done and you're like, well, that ain't fair. I did these and now they're not even assigned. Well, then I'm sorry. All right. It sure is never going to hurt anyone to do some extra work. But like I said, counting these here, eight of them here for chapter 6, 3 of them for chapter 7. That's 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And I just thought that was too much work to expect people to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm starting it here, but for the next chapter as well, we're going to go over 8 and 9 next week. I'm going to pare those down as well, just so you know. We will do something as a class. Some of it won't be assigned. Some of it will be assigned. All right, so as it says, chapter 6 that say you do and turn in for grade, those are going to be due a week from yesterday, February 2nd by midnight. Anything that says, for the homework for chapter 6 or 7, we're going to go over that in just a minute. You don't have to do any of that. So no homework assigned. I'm not talking labs, I'm talking homework. Not from that PDF, nothing from 6 or 7. All right. I attached 2 folders with all my code. I'm not going to write it for you from scratch. I'm just going to go over it with you. All right. And again, as it says, you do not have to reproduce or turn in any of this work. You've already been given that. You also don't have to reproduce, or I shouldn't say reproduce, but create or turn in any work that says not assigned. All right. Now, I'm just asking you guys, as I always do, are there any questions on that? And if I hear nothing, I'm just going to go on. So any questions on what I just said?
No, sir.
All right. So that's why it said, just in case you find this confusing, that's why I wanted to go over it. Now, we're going to start, but before we do, I want to show you one more thing. All right, and that is this. Now, I don't have any idea where anybody in this class lives. Not to be mean, I don't care. All right, but usually every fall and every spring at the Rankin St. Louis campus, they have what they call a LAN party, where you can come in with your computer. You can basically, they'll hook you up to the network there. You can play against each other. You play different video games. They have pizza and they have soda and stuff. And they're having the one here will be Friday, April 8th from 4 p.m. until 1 a.m. Yeah, it's going to be open. Rankin will be open. Their lab in St. Louis will be open until 1 in the morning. All right. Now, if you think, well, that sounds cool, I just put this up here. You can contact Evan Gudmested. Evan is my counterpart. I hope I spelled his name right. I think I did. So if you've got questions, you can contact AWD Rankin St. Louis instructor Evan Gudmested at eagudmested@rankin.edu. I have never gone to one of these. All right. I've heard good things from people who have gone, that they're a lot of fun. If you could care less, well, then I just wasted 2 minutes of your life. All right. So I'm going to now start to go over this work. All right. So Clayton is saying I cannot join the Teams meeting today.
Yeah,
right.
It was telling me like it wasn't working this morning. I was trying for like a good 10 minutes and then all of a sudden just let me in.
All right. Well, I'm going to resend him the link, so give me a second here. Let's see. No, there we go. Oops, try that again. One more time. Boom. Boom.
No, Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Yeah, I got in. I got in this
You
morning.
got it. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, it took me a good minute though to get in. It wasn't letting me in for some reason. I don't know why.
John said the same thing happened to him.
All right. Yep.
So not sure what it was, but I'm glad you got in. All right. So what I'm going to do today is, again, I'm going to go over, not that, I'm going to do that one first. I'm going to go over the labs for Chapter 6 and Chapter 7. I sent you this. Now, unfortunately or unfortunately, the Chapter 7, where it says here 7.1b, and I'll show you all this, I did that separately, and I just dragged it in here. So I'm hoping you can see all that. If for some reason you can't see all three of these, just email me and I'll send you the 7.1b, or else I'll send it out to everybody if I hear that. So I'm going to bring this up. And the goal here is to just go over with you different ways of doing things. What do I mean by that? Last night, one of the students who watches the stuff on tape emailed me and said, hey, I'm trying to do kind of mimic what you did on this one program here, and I can't find it in the book. Where did you get that from? And a lot of times what I do is I do a hybrid of what's in the book and what's in my head. Now, I'm hoping that makes sense to everybody. And what I'm saying is, I mean, sometimes when you say, oh, why'd you do it like this? Because I did. All right. So I just look at a problem, and I mean, I've got the solutions for all of these. I don't look at them. I can tell you that. I'm not making that up. All right. I have never, in chapters 1 through 11, have ever looked at a solution that's in the book. A couple times I have for 12 through 16. That's the object-oriented stuff, just to make sure what I did was what they were asking for. All right. So I'm going to show you what I did. So this is, and hopefully you can see, can everybody see the calculator on my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what I should have done, I should have changed the text up here and just said chapters 6 and 7 lab calculator. All right. And that changed that right there. Okay. So when I run this, what I've done is I have checked to make sure that for both operand 1 and for operand 2, that A, they handle the case of no input, B, they handle the case of non-numeric input, and I don't remember what the other one, whatever, at least those two, okay? And for the operator, I made sure it wasn't blank, and I made sure it was either a plus sign or a minus sign or a multiply or a divide or a modulo. Now, we got around this in the example I gave you by using a drop down. All right, but since they haven't talked about drop downs yet, I did it the way they did it. All right, and so if I put 37 here plus 23 here, that should give me 60 right here. Should make sense. We also wanted to handle the case where you tried to divide by 0, either with a divide or a modulo. All right, so the exit, nothing new there. It's the exact same stuff. Underneath the exit, I've got, again, my own show error message, so I'm not going to go over those. The clear all 3 of those fields, I guess all 4 of them. The one for operand 1, the one for operand 2, the one for the operator, the one for the result, and then set the focus to operand 1. All right, so again, if I run this, wrong one, if I run this, I kind of combined both of these into one, but I'm going to go over them anyway with you in just a bit. All right, so again, notice required field missing, operand 1 is the required field, and non-decimal input, operand 1 must be a valid decimal value. And I don't remember if there was anything else we checked for that or not. So I'm just going to put in here 23. Now, the operator is a required field. That's what I call the field, was just the operator. If I put in something that doesn't exist, operator must be a valid operator, and I let you know what it was. If I put in a plus sign here and I click calculate, I'm going to get the same thing for operand 2. All right, it's required. It's got to be numeric. And if I put in here 25, so 23 plus 25 should give me 48. It does. If I change the symbol to a minus, that works. To a multiply, that works. To a divide, that works. And if I attempt to divide by 0, I get the message illegal attempt to divide by 0. If I attempt to modulo by 0, I again get the message illegal attempt to divide by 0. So hopefully, and I'm going to go over all the code in a second, but hopefully the way this runs or the way this works makes sense to everyone. And if it doesn't, then hopefully you're going to ask. As always, and I'm not going to show you this, but as always, here I set the tab order, I set the start position, I set the accept button, and I set the cancel button. All right, so all that stuff was done. So let's look at the calculate. And again, I can't say this to you too many times. A lot of times, people have looked at my code and go and say, well, I wouldn't have done it that way. And you know what? I think, at least, that's a good thing. And what I mean by saying that, what I mean by that's a good thing is then you're thinking outside the box. You're thinking, well, how would I do it? And that's what you should be doing. All right. So what do we have here? Well, I've got the same kind of stuff that I've had previously. In fact, I'm looking at this. There we go. So right here, keep going, validate operand 1, validate operand 2, I'm sorry, validate operand 1, then validate the operator, then validate operand 2. If all of that stuff works, then convert the value that's in the first text box and call it operator or operand 1. Convert the value in the second text box, and that'll the third text box. That's operand 2. And what was in the other one, the operator, I just called the operator. Then I called perform the operation. So what I'm trying to show you here is this has been modularized. All right. So if you look in here, then what do we have? Validate operand 1. What are we doing? I again went back in and I grabbed from what our authors gave us, the is present, the is decimal, and the is within range. So I grabbed all those to be able to use in this program. I don't remember if I used the within range or not. I changed it to my own. All right. So as it says here, validate operand 1. So what am I doing? I'm creating this Boolean variable that's called retval. Retval is just short for return value. All right. I could have given it a default value. I could have, but I didn't. If I was going to get, I would have said equal true. Now notice when I do that, it turns gray. If I put my mouse over it, it says local variable, etc. And somewhere over here, I believe it's got a warning that basically just says that that's redundant. Well, you know what? I'll leave it in there. That's fine. So this return value, I'm setting it equal to our is present. What does that mean? That means that is present is going to have to return a Boolean because retval, we're stuffing the results into retval and we define retval as being a Boolean. So this is present must either return true or it must return false. It must do one or the other. All right. So we come in here to this retval. The is present, and it's right there. Now, did I change it around from what Muroc had? Yes. Muroc returned a string. I'm returning a Boolean. All right. So this is a local version. This is my own retval I'm setting to true. And I'm saying if there's nothing inside, so what's value and what's name? Well, we passed them in as what? That's our operand. So that's what that is right there is what is in here. And what is in there, you'll notice that here I put in a tag that I called operand 1. In here I put in a tag that I called the operator. And in here I put in a tag that's called operator 2. Why did I do that? Again, so that I would be able to use what is shown in our book as far as writing these generic types of functions to do data validation. All right. So what I'm doing then is for each one of these, all right, so for each one of these, what I'm doing is I'm coming in and I'm checking to make sure there's something in there. So this is present will be called, and it will be called for operand 1, for the operator, and for operand 2. So this will be called 3 times. Why? Because I want to check all 3 of these values that are not the read-only ones. So I want to check this and this and this to make sure that none of those are empty. Now, again, I'm just going to keep asking. Is there anything about that? You don't even have to say yes or no, but if I hear nothing, I'm going on. Does what I'm doing right there with the is present, does that make sense to everyone?
Yes, sir.
All right. So then we do the is decimal. All right. Couple things about this. First of all, I only have to call this twice. I do not have to call is decimal for the operator. That makes no sense. I only have to call it for what's in here and for what's in there. That should make sense to everybody. And what am I passing in? The same stuff, value and name. So this is the text box, text. This is the text box tag. So we're attempting, and I took this again right out of Muroc. We're attempting to do a try-parse decimal. If it fails, we're going to do this. We're going to call our error message that says the name that we passed in must be a valid decimal value. And we're going to set retval to false. Why do I keep setting ret val to false in here where it's true up here? Because I keep checking it in here. And I say, hey, now do this. If not ret val, all right, then do this. Well, what's that doing? If it returned false, this update appropriate text box, all that's doing is it's clearing out the associated text box, setting the focus and getting the heck out. So I'm doing the same stuff for both. I'm calling this 3 times, once for the first text box, once for the second text box, once for the third text box. All right. Then I am calling this twice, once for the first text box, once for the second text box, or the third text box. All right. And then finally, I've got this thing that says is valid data. All right. And I'm calling it here. And I'm calling it here. All right. So what's inside of is valid data? That's being called twice. Well, I've got is valid operator, and that is being called for my operator. So let's look at that first, and then we'll look at the is valid data. All the operator here says, this says if we did not enter one of those. So if we did not enter for our operator a plus sign or a minus sign or a multiply sign or a divide sign, all right, or a percent sign, meaning that either we left it blank or we put in something numeric or we put in something non-numeric that is not one of those things in the double quotes in blue right there. All right, so if that's the case, all right, if that's the case, we're going to give a different error message. All right, so this is our is valid data. I put this in later because this is what the book asked for. They asked for not to be able to put in any negative numbers, and they asked for not to allow a number greater than 1 million. I could have used constants here. I just did it the way they showed it in the book. So if we put in a negative number or we put in a number that's greater than 1 million, we give an out of range error right there. Finally, we come in here and I call this. And all this was, so I didn't have to repeat a lot of code. If I want to clear out the text, clear whatever in the first text box and set the focus, I want to call that and pass in a 1. If I want to do the second one, all right, which is operand 2, and this is the operator. Otherwise, I just don't do anything. Finally, then, for perform the operation, all right, this is pretty much the same thing that we looked at before. I put a string in here called result bad that I set equal to illegal attempt to divide by 0. All right. And you come in here and you start taking a look at what's in here. All right. And it's pretty much the same stuff we've seen before until you get to this. They told us to come up with a thing that said valid operation. So that right there is very simple. It's right here. This just says if we're doing a divide, we only call this for a divide and a modulus. So if our denominator, our second value, is 0, all right, we don't want to do the divide. All right. Now, I'm not going to lie to you either. I just tell you to give you a little bit of advanced planning or whatever you want to call it. This is one of the first programs that I assigned for the people who are my 4th semester students who are taking the the Java Android programming, class with me. All right. And they had to do it. Now, there were some different things. They had to add what's called a spinner control, which was like our drop down and do a couple of other things. But what I'm trying to show you is, the logic was the same. They'd already done this one here. All right. So my question for you, in this particular example, in 6.1 here, I did not add any exception handling. There's nothing in there. All I did was I added what we have gotten from Muroc, and that is an is present right there. And is present, and is decimal, and is valid operator, which is my take on the is double is decimal, and an is valid data, which again, those are both checking for ranges or whatever. So time has come to ask that question before I go on. Are there any questions on this particular example? Anything?
No, sir.
All right, then I'm going to close this. And I'm going to go on to the next one, which is 7.1. 7.1 has been written twice in here. And if you say, well, why'd you do that? I'm going to show you right now. All right. So both interfaces look exactly like this. All right. So if I view the code, this was the one with the tax rate. Again, what you'll notice in here is this one, again, this is the one that I wrote back for like chapter 5. So I'm only going to spend about a minute literally going over this because I want to spend more time on the rewritten one. So came in here, two variables, a double for taxable income and a double for income tax owed. Again, may have been better to make those decimals. Works just fine as it is. All right. Got their keep going thing in here. So we're calling our own routine validate taxable income not empty, validate taxable income numeric, validate taxable income positive. As long as those keep returning true, that it's not empty and it's not non-numeric and it's is positive, then we want to calculate the income tax owed. So if we look at these, pretty simple stuff. I'm on line 128 here, and you can see the comment above it. If the text box is empty, print out an error message and set the focus. All right. I don't know if I even set the focus there, but I could have. All right. So probably to be complete, unless I haven't done it, I could always come back and say txt taxable income dot focus. Like that. All right. So that is a way of checking for the absence of something and not putting it in a try-catch block. What you're going to see in a moment is I went back and I did put this all inside of a try-catch block. Now, if you take the time to go back and reread this, which is our book for chapter 6, 6.1 and 6.2, 7.1 and 7.2, all right, you might say, well, wait a minute, you didn't put the exception handling in there. No, I didn't. All right, I did what I had time to do. All right, I'm not making excuses. I'm just telling you the truth. I spent more time on the other one than I did with this one. So I spent more time on the tax one than I did on the calculator. All right, so that's validating that it's not empty. If there was something in it, we set this originally to true, and if there was something in it, we're going to skip the if and just return ret val so it'll return true. If there was nothing in it, we're going to print out an associated error message. We're going to reset the focus. All right, there's nothing in there, so we don't have to remove anything. And we're going to set ret val to false, so we'll return false. So in other words, if I run this and I put nothing in there, it should come back with this message: nothing inputted for taxable income and no input. No input, nothing inputted for taxable income. All right. So then we go and we check to see that it was numeric. And again, I'm showing you this, and then I'm going to go over the other one to show you, some people are really like to use exception handling, and they use try-catch all over the place. Some people don't. I will tell you the truth that the instructors that I had when I was learning try-catch said that, and these were professional programmers at the college I was going to, all right, the guy said that as far as he was concerned, try-catch was a program bottleneck, that it really slowed down processing much more than using ifs, etc., like I'm using in here, or while loops. So he tried to avoid them. The way he put it basically was like the plague. All right. I've dealt with other people who think that they're the best thing ever. All right. Most people are somewhere in the middle. What I do is I try to typically not use them unless I can't think of a better way. All right. So here we've got our validate taxable income. Again, very similar to what you saw that is decimal that we had, but I'm making the check in here. All right. And what am I doing? Well, if it's not numeric, it should come back and say non-numeric value entered for taxable income, and the heading should be non-numeric input. And you'll see again, if I do come in here, non-numeric input, non-numeric value inputted for taxable income. Well, that's good. That's exactly what we wanted to have happen. Again, when you come in here, right there, you set ret val to true. If this if statement does not succeed, you won't go into the body of it, so you'll go right from here and here. You'll jump right down and return true. But if it is true, you're resetting it from true up there to false, and then you'll return false. All right. Then we have our positive, which is a pretty simple check. All right. As it says, it validates that the taxable income was greater than or equal to 0. All right. Why you'd want to put 0 in there, I have no idea. I mean, if you made nothing, technically you wouldn't have had any tax. All right. But if we put a negative number in here, if we input a negative number, we should get a message box that says must input positive value for taxable income, and the title should be negative input. So if I come through here and put in a negative, there it is. All right. All right. Finally, if we get down to here, now, is there a better way of writing this routine than the way I wrote it? Quite possibly, yes. But what they asked you to do, if you remember, if you actually looked in the book, they showed you how to do the first one, and they asked you to do one or two more. I did all of them. So I did everything. And that's why I'm saying, could I have made a mistake in here? Of course I could have. Plus, I think I told you this already when we talked about this earlier. If you notice in here, this says 0 to 98.75. This starts at 98.76. Well, I think I changed mine to 0.99 for all these. All right. But I left the original requirements in here because otherwise, if somebody made $9,875.12, it wouldn't be handled. All right. So again, this is a big honking if statement. If your income was between this, you do this for the income tax owed. Otherwise, if it was between this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right. And you'll notice the last else if says if it was greater than or equal to $518,401. That should handle any high end. And on the low end, 0 was the biggest value that we allowed. All right. If for some reason we'd get in here and it would have garbage that wouldn't meet any of this criteria, which doesn't make any sense, there is no final else in here, so nothing would happen. All right, so once we get through this big honking if statement and we figured out which one is correct, then we just want to go in and take that text box and set it to that income tax owed formatted as currency. Our clear is the same that we've been doing. We're clearing the two text boxes and setting the focus. And the click button or the exit button is the same, and our show message button is the same. So if I run it one last time, and I come in here and I put in, I don't know, let's just say somebody made $100,000. And the income tax that they owe is $18,079.26, according to this. All right, clear works, exit works, etc. All right. Unless anyone has any questions, I'm going to go on then to the next one. All right. I will do so then. I'm going to go on to close this. And I'm going to go on to 7.1b. right here. All right. And I'm going to reset it so that when I run it, it is my startup project. You'll notice the difference. This one, in fact, we'll put that in here. We'll say original tax calculator. All right, so now we've got that in here. That was our original one. So let me do a file, save all. Let me close that. And this is the modified one. So I'm going to change the text in there to modified income tax calculator. And you can see that, boom, that's changed. All right, because otherwise the two look exactly the same. Now, what should happen when I run them is it should run the same. All right, so nothing there. All right, handles non-numeric. Handles negative. And again, if I put in 100,000, like I did before, that runs the same way. Clear works, exit works, etc. So I want to show you that code. All right. And as it says in here, in the new version of this exercise, so just so you see that. So you'll notice right away when we take a look here, I'm going to shrink this all way down so you can see as much code as possible. The whole thing is in a try-catch block. All right. And I say, hey, check to see if it's present. If it's not, throw an argument exception. If it is, keep going and check to see if it's double. If it's not, throw a format exception. If it is a double, keep going and make sure it's positive. If it's not, throw an argument out of range exception. If it is a number that's positive, calculate income tax owed. All right, I didn't check on these, but to me, argument out of range exception seemed to be a more specific exception than just argument exception. That's why I put this one before this one. All right, it all seemed to work. Okay, so I think that the order in which I put it in was just fine. So again, everything is in a try-catch block. Anytime that it fails, because keep going, remember, is going to be a Boolean that's going to call is present, is double, and this one I didn't even change. This is still mine. So I changed and added in here the generic data validation that we were given from Muroc here and here. But just to show you that you don't have to do it that way, I left in the one that I had. All right. Also, if you look at these, you'll notice that in all three of these cases, I've got out message, and out message. All right. Why am I telling you this? Well, I mean, message was just a string that's got nothing in it, but that's what's going to hold what I end up passing to my show error message routine. All right, so I'm passing it from my click event to each one of these things. And I'm making it an out parameter, which says that here I'm going to set message inside of this routine. Here I'm going to set message inside of this routine. And here I'm going to set it inside of this routine. All right. Now I'm looking here, validate that taxable income was positive. Probably I should have also passed these two things in here as well. However, if I get down to this point, I already know that it can't be empty because is present succeeded, and I know it's a double. So I already know that. That's why I didn't need to pass those two things and check them again. So the way that this works, and this is what I want to make sure that you understand, and that is it goes through here until it finds a reason not to. So again, imagine that in here, keep it simple, that in here, I put in $1,000. We're just going to pretend that that's what I did, was I put in $1,000 right there. All right. So it comes in is present, well, that's going to return true because there is something present in there. So it'll skip this and it'll check and it'll say, is that a double? If I just put in 1,000, if I don't put in the 0.00, it doesn't care. So it'll return true. So I'll skip this. Then it'll come in and check to see if it's positive. Well, it is because it's more than 0. So again, this will be skipped and I'll go down to here. I'll go down to calculate income tax owed. And it'll come down here and it'll say, it'll fall into this range right here. So it'll say my taxable income is 10%. So if I run this and put in $1,000, it should say in here 100, and it does. All right, so that's my income tax that's owed. All right, now let's take a look at another one. So let's assume for a second that in here I left that blank. All right, we're just going to go through all these cases here. So if I left this blank, it's going to call is present, and it's going to pass in the blank text, box text, and the blank and the tag. So it comes in here and it checks is present, and it sets ret val to true, and it says if value, and remember, value was the text that was in my text box. If there's nothing in there, there isn't. So it's going to set name, which is that tag, all right, right there, that I just called taxable income. It's going to say taxable income is a required field, and it'll set ret val to false. So again, plain computer, you come in here. If this is false, all right, then you just basically are going from here to here. But if there's nothing in there, you go from here, you check, oh, there's nothing in there, so you've got to do this and then return. So again, that's the case when we run this. If we leave it blank and it says no taxable income entered, taxable income is a required field. So that stuff, there's the taxable income is a required field. And when we call that from here, no taxable income entered. All right. So let's look at the next one. So let's imagine that again, we come in here and now we enter something non-numeric. All right. So we come in again, I'm just playing computer here. So we come in and we check the is double. And again, we're passing in the text in that first text box, the tag for that first text box, which was called taxable income, and message. We go down to is double, and there's the whole routine. So again, this value is going to be the text that's in the first text box. This will be the tag for that, and this will be our message. So again, if we come through here and we use the 1,000 like we said, the parse will work. So this will be skipped. We'll do this and we'll jump right down to here and return true. But if we type hello in there, now, yeah, the parse is going to fail. So it'll say taxable income must be a valid numeric double value. Just so you can make sure that that's what's happening. Where it's got double value, exclamation point, I'm going to add 2 more and save it. So now we've got 3 exclamation points. I'm going to run that, and I'm going to put in here hello and hit enter. And you can see, might be hard to see, but there are 3 exclamation points in there. All right. Finally, then, if we go in here and we put in a negative number in here, again, playing computer. All right. We're going to come down and do the validate taxable income positive. All right. And we're doing the same kind of thing. We know now that this conversion cannot fail. We could have done a try parse there, but it can't fail. We've already validated that there's something in there. We validated that it's numeric. We don't know if it's positive or not. That's what we're going to check in this routine. But we know it is a valid number. So we do the conversion right there, and then we check. If it's less than 0, we set message to must input positive value for taxable income. And when we jump back up here, we're also going to then say negative taxable income entered. Let's make sure that that works. So I put in here a negative 123, hit enter. There's our negative taxable income entered. All right. And there's our message. So the only other thing I want to say about this is, again, if we come down and look at this, all right? So if we come down and look at this, I do want you to understand very quickly. So we come through here and we do is present, all right? Is present succeeds, we just keep going and we do this. If is present fails, we're going to do this, meaning it returned false, meaning there was nothing in there. So we're going to throw a new argument. So right away, the execution immediately stops in this return, and it looks for a catch that's got an argument exception in it. It says, oh, there's one. So what are we doing? We're calling show message, and we're passing that message that we got back from our is present, all right? And we're giving it our own title. Okay, in just the same way if we keep going. So we did put a number in there, or something in there. But let's suppose we put in something non-numeric. All right, so this will not run because it's not going to return false, but then we'll call is double. That will return our error message that we saw. All right, and it'll return false. All right, because it's a Boolean return, but it'll set that message. So then in that case, this format exception will be thrown. So again, execution stops right there and it goes down and it looks for a format exception. It finds it here. All right. It goes in and it takes that message that we got back that said something like the input entered was non-numeric, and it calls show message with that message and this title. All right. Finally, when it comes through here, so if it comes through and this worked, that returned true, this worked, that returned true, then we come down and we call validate taxable income positive. And again, we pass that message as an output right there. All right. And as it says, if this fails, we call an argument out of range exception. And with that, we jump down to argument out of range. We've already gotten back our message and it says negative taxable income entered. Finally, all right, we try this. This succeeds. It was present. This succeeds. It was a double rather. This succeeds. It was positive. Then we come down to here. Then and only then do we call calculate income tax owed. And I don't think I even changed anything on that from the last program. And again, the clear button is the same. The exit button is the same. All right. So unless somebody has or anyone has any questions about this, I'm going to go on. Again, the idea behind this was that you could compare and contrast doing this with and without exception handling. All right, so if there aren't any questions, then I'm just going to go on to the next one. All right, so again, you should have all this code. If for some reason, I know that at least one person emailed me yesterday and said that there was something that I'd sent that they couldn't open. If that ever happens, please, that's fine. Just let me know, and when you let me know, I'll just resend it out to you. All right, and if enough people ask, I'll resend it out to everybody. All right, so there were no questions. There were questions on that one. So I'm going to bring up the other one. That's the wrong one. Where is it? Here. Yep. All right. So this was the fortune cookie and the BMI. Now, I'm going to take until from now, probably until the break, because what they asked you to do in here was to use an array. All right. Mr. Smith wrote these exercises, but when he wrote them, I believe we were using a different book. We don't have arrays until chapter 8 in our book. But what you're going to get, just because I want this program to make a little bit of sense to you, is about a 5 or 10 minute explanation of arrays. All right. So imagine, if you would, for just a second, I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios. That what I wanted to do was for each one of you in here, all right, let's just say that everybody in here took a test, took a hands-on test. All right, I won't use names or anything like that. So let's just say I have student 1 and their test, they got an 87. Student 2, and they got a 93. So just, if you would, please just imagine I wrote that, and then finally I got up to student 8, because there's 8 students in the class, equals 100. Now, that's totally fine to do that, but that's 8 different variables. Again, totally fine to do that. But, all right, where I went for my 4-year college degree, my first degree, I went to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and as an example, I took a child psychology class, and there were 300 people in that class. Economics class, and there were 500 people in that class. I mean, putting their student 2, student 3, putting that 500 times seems like a waste of time. All right. So there's a better way you can do this. So again, I'm just going to put these in here. I'm going to actually put them in and change this in just a second. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's fine. So this will be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So, I could jazz up the grades, but I think you get the idea. In fact, let me do that. And I'll just put in here 40, and they're all going to go up each time. 50, 60, 70. There's no significance to these. 80, 85, 90, and 100. Okay? Now, that's totally fine, but like I said, that is 8 different variables. All right? So what I should do is I should change all these. To that. All right, so there's 8 different decimal variables. Totally fine to do it that way. But like I said, what if I had 20, 30, 50, 100 or more students? So I'm going to show you another way that we can do that. And that is, I can come in here and I can type in decimal, bracket, bracket, all right? And I can call it students equal new decimal, and I can give it a size, oops, of 8, right? Or probably a cleaner way to do it, because I already know what the tests are, this would just make them all 0. So another way I could do this, probably a cleaner way because I know them already, is I could come in here and just do this. Since these are numbers, they don't have to be in double quotes. So 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 85, 90, and 100. All right. You can already see that I got a lot less typing between here and then going to here. If I did it this way, so if I did do it like this, and then I wanted to magically come in and add all those numbers, I can do that. I can say students 0 equal 40, and let me just copy that. And then this would be 1, this would be 2, this would be 3, this would be 4, 5, 6, and 7. This again, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 85, 90, and 100. So this allows me to tell you a few different things about arrays. All right. Now, arrays in this language, this is more for the benefit of Clayton and of Michael, McLean, and Don, and Mason. We went through arrays last semester in the JavaScript class, and they'll work the same way here, except for one big, real big, important thing. When you create an array in JavaScript, you don't give it a type. So you don't say decimal. You would say something like this, var. But then you can put in something like this. You can put in that, and then you can put in a Boolean, and you can put in a string. You can do that kind of stuff. You can do that in a language like JavaScript. You cannot do that in a language like C#. C# is a highly regimented language. What I mean by that is you have to let it know the data type, so it's strongly typed, the type, and you have to let it know the size, either by doing this or by doing this. All right? Java, which you learn in the 4th semester, works virtually exactly like what we're looking at right now. All right, except Java, I don't think, has a decimal type. You'd make these doubles. All right, we could have made them doubles in C# as well. But what I'm trying to get across to you, all right, and I'm going to use the same analogy that I used last semester, so sorry guys if you've already heard this. But I mentioned to you as an example, I mentioned to you how I took that child psychology class. And I remember a few things about the instructor. He was a little quirky. All right, he was a little different. And the first day of class, when he came in, he was about a half an hour late. Well, the way that it works in the university system is if your instructor isn't there within 15 minutes, you can leave and they can't mark you absent. Well, to get around that, what happened was after 10 minutes, not the teacher, but the teacher's graduate assistant came in and said, hey, he's going to be here, but he's running a little late. It was heavy traffic this morning. Well, what does that have to do with anything? Let's pretend for a second that what the teaching assistant did was she or he came in and said, hey, the teacher's going to be 10 more minutes. He's running late. Here is a Lego for you to play with. And they literally gave us a Lego. Okay? Well, what I'm telling you is, right there, we got 8 Legos. And they're 8 different Legos. But if the people sitting around with one another say, hey, give me your Lego and we'll put something together, and you put them together, that's what you get here. So the difference is these things in here are single data values. They're simple elementary data items. When you start doing this, you're creating what's called a data structure. So what we're doing is we're starting to give more power to some of the stuff we can do. What do I mean by giving you more power? Well, let's suppose that when I started, I wanted to make all these 0 to begin with. All right, so I'm going to leave these here. And I'm just going to change all these just to 0. Now, if I wanted to read in values for each one of these, if I wanted to read in values, I'd have to do 8 reads, 1 for each student. All right, but like this, if I wanted to come in here and take these and make them all 0, the easiest way to do that would be to do this. I could say for int LCV, I call my loop control variable LCV, equals 0, LCV less than, and not down there, I'm sorry. I'm doing it here. So if I want to set all these to 0 first, so while it's less than, students, which is the name of my array, dot length, all right, plus LCV, all right? Then I come in here and I say LCV, whoops, I say student LCV equals 0. Now, compare that with this. You can already see that we're saving, or I guess compare that with this here. You can already see that rather than 8 lines of code, we've cut it down to 4 lines of code. All right, and 2 of those lines are just our curly braces. But now let's say it's a big class with 100 students. I'm going to have 100 of these and 100 of these. All I have to do if I've got 100 students is have some kind of a constant there. So if it said const int, let's just call it stud length for student length. And let's say originally it was 8. All right. Well, I can still say the name of my thing dot length. It's totally fine. It'll work. All right. Or I can do this and I can come in here and say stud length. And that becomes important because if this changes to 100, I don't have to make any changes here. So the reason that you use things like arrays and other data structures are they allow you to take your data and group it as a unit. And that's what I'm trying to get across to you right here. All right. And you're going to see examples of that. So why am I even telling you this? I mean, you go, yeah, I listened to you. Why the hell should I even care? All right. Well, in this one, it said to use an array, all right, that contained these 8 different fortune cookie sayings. I'm not going to read them to you. You can see there's the first 4, there's the second 4. All right. Well, I want to show you quickly, this is my array. I'm going to copy that and bring that over to here where I've been working. There's an array of strings. Now, I just put it on different lines just so you could see everything. I can move this over. There. So I've got an array. I don't even have to give it a size. This is where you put the size of the array. I don't have to give it a size because the compiler for my computer is smart enough. It is smart enough that it is smart enough that it'll figure out, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that there's 8 of them. This will be fortunes 0, fortunes 1, fortunes 2, fortunes 3, fortunes 4, fortunes 5, fortunes 6, and fortunes 7. And I'm not even going to ask. I'm not even going to say, hey, does that make sense to you? Because it's something, for lack of better words, you've got to drink in. All right? And I just threw that at you quickly, but I want you to understand that what we wanted to do in this program, and this is what I want to show you, and we're going to take a break in 2 minutes. All right? But it says here what we're supposed to do is it says write a GUI application that has an array with these 8 different fortunes in it. I already did that. Then create a method that's called generate fortune that accepts no parameters and returns 2 strings. I didn't even do that. My whole program is right there. That's the whole thing. Now, I could have taken this and basically put it into its own routine, but that's it. So you see how small it is. There's just my clear and my exit. So when I run this, oh, it's not going to run. Oh, it did. Good. So it says click the button on the right. I made it a button with I put in a picture of a fortune in there, and I can click it, and I keep getting 2 different fortunes. So that's 2 of those 8. I can run it as many times as I want. I can clear, but I don't have to clear. And I can exit. Okay? So what we're going to do, it is 9:09, just about 9:10. We're going to do 2 more things in class today. First thing is, after our break. So I'm going to have a 10-minute timer here. All right, before I hit enter. When we come back, I'm going to quickly go over this program and the other program Then I want to do one more time, go over what's due and when it's due. And we should be done by 10 o'clock. Please take your 10-minute break starting right now. And I'll be back. I'm out of water, so I'm going to go get some water. I'll be back in just a couple minutes. All right, I'm back and I'm going to continue on here. Like I said, we'll spend 5 minutes, hopefully, not much more than that, going over this. So the program, forget about this. I commented this out. All I did was I took all of this code right here and put it in its own routine called generate fortune. And I commented all of it out and the call to it. Why? Because that's what we were told to do in here. All right. So taking it from the top then, again, here was our array of fortunes. All right. Here, remember, we need this in order to be able to create random numbers. Now, this is a little different. This is going to create a random number between 0 and 7. 0 and 7. You always put one less, or one number more, I should say, than what you want. That should give me a thing between 1 and 7. Now, let's say that I did this. I want to show you, I'm going to purposely put an error in here. I'm going to put in here 25. This says give me a random number between 1 and 24. Now watch when I run the program. And I click. Immediately it comes back out and it says index was out of the bounds of the array. Guess what? This index out of range exception was one of the exceptions that we looked at. I don't know if I still have that up here or not. No, I don't. But yesterday when we went through and we looked at these exceptions, come on. There they are. One of the ones I brushed over was this one, index out of range exception. When an array index is outside of the lower or upper bounds of the array or collection. Well, that's what we just got. And the reason that we just got that, the reason that the program rather blew up, where is that? There we go. Is we were trying to reference here a number that was greater than the number of elements we have. So let's just say that it generated the number 14. Well, it's looking for 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it gets to 7, it says there is no 14. So it generates an exception that says index was out of bounds of the array. Now, we could have checked for that exception and then done something, all right? But better programming practice would just be to do this, because then it should be impossible for that thing to happen. All right, so again, if I come back here and I stop the run and save it and run it again, it should run just fine. All right. All right, so looking at the rest. So again, we put this in there because what that does is it's going to allow us to use rand to call the different random number functions. What that is, I'm jumping ahead. This is something you're going to learn in chapter 12, but it's important that you at least hear the concepts right now. That line that you see right there in line 62, what we're doing is we're creating a new instance of the random class or the random number class that's called rand. So it's the name of the class, which is random, the name of the object of that class we're creating, which is rand, and then we're telling it it's going to be a new random object that we're creating. This whole act in here of doing this is taking a class and creating an object of it. A class is like a blueprint. So a class for human beings, we all have a height, we all have a weight, eye color, etc. All right? But what we're doing in here is we are creating a new instance of the random number class that's called rand. All right? And this instance right here is known as an object. So the whole thing of using classes and objects together in code is what's referred to as object-oriented programming, or OOP. That's what the subject of chapters 12 through 16 in your book are. To me, in my opinion, and I could be wrong on this, I oftentimes am, that's the hardest part of your book. And I think the next we go over 17 and 18, and I don't think those are that hard. Then we go over database stuff, and I don't think that's that hard. But I think you're probably going to find the hardest part of the book is going to be the middle, so to speak, 12 through 16. So generate a new random number object called rand. Then run the next method on there. This is kind of like if we'd be calling a function. Basically, that's what we're doing. So we're telling rand that we want it to give us a number between 0 and 1 less than 8, or between 0 and 7. Stick the results in variable f1. Then we're telling it to do it again, and stick the results in F2. All right. Now, you may or may not know why I did this, but what I didn't want to have happen is I didn't want to have the same fortune print twice. So if I got, for example, if I got the number 3 generated twice, remember 0, 1, 2, 3, it would have then said, for both my fortunes would have said, the most obvious solution is not always the best. That would have printed twice. I didn't want that. So I put it in a loop here that said, hey, if they are equal, in other words, if the random number that was generated here and the random number that was generated here, if they're the same number, then generate a new one for the second one. Look, and if it's still the same, do it again. So this is going to stay in a loop until it generates a number for F2 that is different from F1. All right. Then I just said, I'm building an output string here. I said, give me the first fortune. That's fortunes F1. That's this one. Then give me the second one. That's fortunes F2. And in between them, since it's inside of a text box, do that \R\n for a couple blank lines. Then take that output string that we were building and throw it into the label. In fact, I guess since it was a label, probably the \n would have just worked. I don't remember. I'm going to leave it the way it is. But what we were asked to do is we were asked to write a function or a method called generate fortune. So there that is. I'm going to take all of this code here and I'm going to comment it out. It's like it doesn't even exist. Now I'm going to take the code where I copied it to, the generate fortune, and I'm going to uncomment it. Whoops, not that way, I'm not. Press the wrong button. So now that's gone. So now instead of doing everything inside of my buttons click event, when I get to the button click event, it's calling a new routine and we're doing all the stuff in there. Now, unless I screwed something up, which of course is always possible, but unless I did screw something up, what we should find here is we should have the same kind of output when we run it. And it looks like we do. All right. Now, when I first did this, I didn't have this label here. I had this in the middle. And you can see if I make, well, I can't make this really, well, I could. I can make it bigger like that, but that's not really making it bigger. I didn't know if people would be able to read this. It says you will get through this. So what I did was I put a label to the side. I could have made this bigger. All right. So in other words, I could have made the form bigger and then made this bigger. All right. And hopefully what I just said made sense to everybody. All right. So that's just another thing I could have done. Or I could have just put in here, click here to see your fortune. But I decided to make it a little bit, a little bit interactive or a little bit with an image in it, I guess. All right. So looking at the code for this, as I always ask, are there any questions? You don't have to even say no. Anybody have any questions on anything that was done here? All right. Then I'm going to go on to the last one, which is BMI. BMI is another one that when I teach people, when you take the class in the fourth semester class, the Java Android programming class, well, people who get in that class at the beginning, they don't know Java. So we spend a week or two just going over Java fundamentals before we get into Android. This year I did it all in a week. All right. And one of the things that we did as a class is we wrote a BMI program in Java. All right. So again, it's not like this stuff is really going away. All right. So let me do a save here. Let me close this. Let me open the BMI one. And first, before I do, let me set it as my startup project. And there's that. Now, what we were supposed to do, did I keep that? The one we were supposed to create looks like this. Mine isn't perfect. All right. But again, I guess they had weight first, then height. I have height first, then weight. It's no biggie. All right. But I've got 3 buttons where they've got the one. This is going to be my BMI. This is going to be my category. I'm going to explain all that to you in just a moment. All right, first I'm going to run it so you can see what's going on here. Now, if I say that a person is 72 inches tall, meaning they're 6 feet, and they weigh 100 pounds, they're going to be underweight. All right, how do I know that? Well, one way I know it is if you've got a BMI, a body mass index, that's under 18.5, you're categorized as underweight. If you've got a BMI, and I'm going to put in here 166 pounds. If you've got a BMI that is greater than or equal to 18.5, but is less than 25, then you're considered to be of optimal weight. So you're really the right weight for your height. All right. If you come in and you put in, if you get a BMI that is greater than or equal to 25, but less than 30, you're considered overweight. And finally, if you get a BMI that is greater than 30 or more, greater than or equal to 30, you're considered obese. Now, you might say, well, didn't tell us that in the specs. Well, I know it because I've written this program enough times in different languages. All right. But the other way that I know it is I just looked online to double check. Now, they're even coming up with different criteria, just so you see this, because this is fairly new as far as I'm concerned. I just went over to Google Images. All right. And I typed in here Bmi Calculator. See it right there. Whoops. There we go. And when you look, I'm just telling you this so you can see how times have changed. And if I look at this one, I'm going to grab this. That's the one I'm going to use right there. All right. In fact, let me do it like this. So if I bring this thing up, and I'm just going to open it with paint just so you can see it. Notice now there's normal. They don't even show underweight anymore because we have very few people in this country who are underweight. So 18.5 to 24.9, really 99999, really less than 25, that's normal, or what I call optimal. 25 to less than 30 is overweight now because this is fairly new. All right, 30 to under 40 is obese, and over 40 is morbidly obese. So as you can see, and believe me, I'm not trying to give you political commentary here, but this country in many ways is kind of going in the wrong direction, for lack of better words. All right, so looking at the code then, enough with that. As it says here, create a GUI application to calculate a person's body mass index or BMI. If the user does not enter a number, then display invalid rate in red. And I guess I didn't use red, so that's fine. It says make sure to handle the format exception. All right. Then it says if the user enters a weight that's less than 70, I didn't use their numbers because to me they didn't make a lot of sense. So what I did was I used a weight and I said I made them 1 pound to 777 pounds. It's just an arbitrary value I picked out. And for height, I said, well, should be at least 12 inches and shouldn't be any more than 96. So those are the numbers I used. All right. And I don't care, you know, when you're working on one of these assignments, if you want to take some liberties like that, I could have left it the way it was. I originally had it like that. All right. But I mean, to me, they weren't handling children. They weren't handling anybody under 5 feet. All right. And I just didn't like the way that it read. So I made those changes. So again, if the user does not enter a number for the weight or for their height, so if they don't enter a number for the weight, we'll put in invalid weight. I'll worry about the red later. If they don't enter a number for the height, we put in invalid height. All right. If the weight is not within this range, we put in invalid weight. All right. And if the height is not within range, we put in invalid height. All right. I don't even know if I did that, so I'm going to check. So for the height, I'm going to put in a big number. Oh, it's because I use exception handling, so you're not going to be able to see it. All right, so how about, yeah. It just says it was out of the range of valid values. The parameter names must be between 12 and 96. All right, so if I do come in here and do the same thing for weight, it says it cannot be null, but if I put in a big number, it again says must be between 1 and 777. All right. So I skewed, for lack of better words, the requirements a little bit, all right, to make them, to me, something that made more sense. Now, I could have come in here and checked for morbidly obese. I could have done that, but I didn't. All right, that would have been fine, you know, to put it in. But when you're doing something like this, one of the reasons that I came in here and actually put in a prologue is, again, I had to do, you know, to check out those numbers here, I had to go and take a look online to double check and make sure they were correct. Now, I slipped up a little bit here, and I'm going to show you what I mean. I'm going to put in here Bmi Formula, and I'm going to grab it from my actual code. Just one line of code. There it is. We're going to go over all this momentarily. But it's weight divided by height squared times 703. If you didn't want to write it like this, math.pow, you could have written height times height. But that's the formula. So really, you know, if this is a program that I'm doing, that I'm creating, let's just assume for a second, I'm creating a program for a health club, all right? And somebody is going to end up maintaining this program for me. Well, then it's really a nice thing to do to put in something like this so they have a bleeping clue as to what's being done. All right. Again, I know I'm sermonizing, but I just want you to know that. All right. So here were my global constants. And I'm going to explain the last three in a minute. But again, this was the minimum height is 12 inches or 1 foot. Maximum height was 96 inches, which is 8 feet. Minimum weight was 1 pound. Maximum weight was 777 pounds. I don't know how I picked that number. I just did. All right. I made them doubles. They could have been decimals, but I made them all doubles. Except if I made them all decimals, there'd be a problem later. I'll get to that in just a bit. Now, if you remember, as long as your BMI was less than 18.5, you're underweight. Once it reaches 18.5, just if that was your exact thing. So let's say that your BMI was 18.44444, you'd be underweight. If your BMI was 18.5, you'd be optimal weight, just so you see the difference. All right. The reason I'm telling you that is the smallest value you can have for being optimal is 18.5. That's the smallest one you can have. So I call that min optimal, and I set it equal to 18.5. In much the same way, the smallest number you can have to be considered overweight is 25. So I called min over 25. Finally, the smallest number you can have to be considered obese is 30. So I called min obese, and I gave it a value of 30. Now, I'm not asking, again, if you understand that, but again, if you don't, take a look at it. All right? So I could have made comments here. I'm not going to take the time to do that. I told you I was going to try to get done by 10, and that gives me 20 minutes to go over this. But you could put comments here, minimum weight, maximum weight, minimum, you know, and same with height, etc. But I'm not going to do that. So in our button click routine, all right, notice the whole thing is going to be in a big try-catch block. And I've created variables height, which is going to be the height that I put into that text box, weight, for the weight I put into that text box, the BMI and the BMI status, they're both labels. I could have also made them read-only text boxes, would have been fine too. All right, but we're not, You can't go in there and say, you know what, I'm 72 inches tall and I weigh 300 pounds, and it says that my BMI is 40 and I'm obese. Well, I don't like that, so I want to go into here and I want to change that so it says optimal weight, and a BMI of 20 or something like that. You don't want to give them the ability to do that. So, again, jumping back into the code. This is my BMI that's going to be calculated. This is my BMI status that's going to be calculated. Those are the two variables that are, or the two values, I should say, that are going to be calculated. And you'll notice in here, I call them calculate BMI and calculate BMI status. Did you have to call them that? Of course not. But a lot of times, what you're going to find is, if I'm not writing those generic types of routines, if I'm calculating something, I'll oftentimes call it calculate and then show what I'm calculating. If I'm inputting something, I will say input and give it the variable name. If I'm outputting something, I might call it output, I might call it display. All right? Okay, so taking it from the top. I now, instead of keep going, I just call this valid because to me it made more sense than keep going. So this thing is what I have been calling keep going, but I called it valid. And I said, hey, is there a value present in the height text box? Is there something in there? Okay, well, the old is present is the same one we've been using. This is virtually the same thing as the one I showed you earlier for the calculator. What does that mean? That means this is the text in the text box. This is the tag in the text box. So again, I had to come in here, and for height, I went down to tag, and I set the tag to the word height. For weight, I went down to tag, and I set the tag to the word weight. All right. Why? Because that's the only way I'll be able to pass that stuff in. All right. So I check if it's present. If it returns false, I call fix control. This is kind of what I did before. And all that's going to do is it says, take whatever is in my height that happens to be there and clear it out and set the focus. If I pass it with a 1. If I pass it with a 2, it's going to do the same thing for the weight, text box, anything else, it's just going to break. There's nothing else to do. All right. So I come through here and I'm doing the same thing for both of these. So I say, hey, is the height present? If it is it a double? If it's not a double, I'm going to throw a format exception. If this was empty, I'm throwing the argument null exception, just to show you that one. All right. The last time I threw that as an argument exception. The way you throw these, null made more sense. Null means unknown. I didn't pass anything, so it's unknown. All right. So then I come down here and I check within range, and here's where I use my two of my different constants. So again, for the within range, that's the value I put in there. That's the tag or the word height. This is the message that I'm going to possibly write if there's an error. This is my minimum height, which is 12. This is my maximum height, which is 96. And again, my is present is almost exactly the way that it was shown in the book, except I'm using a bool here where they basically just return that message. I'm using a bool. Same thing with the is double. Same thing as the is within range. I even use their names basically. All right. So again, last time, because I'm not trying to waste time, but I want to make sure you get what's going on here. All right. You check for the presence or absence of something in the first text box right there. All right. If there is nothing there, there's really nothing to clear out, but you're setting the focus here and you're throwing an argument null exception. What's that doing? It's going to jump down to here and it's going to find argument null. There it is. All right. It's going to give, this time I used the message that they provide. I didn't even use the message that we did. All right. So I didn't even really need those messages right there. I could have removed this. I could have removed this, etc. Or I could add it and put them both in there. So in other words, I could say plus, and I could add, for example, a blank line, and then put in my message. That would have worked. All right. Now, when it says this and it gives me that error, it's because for message, if I do that, I have to then say message equals the empty string. Once I do that, that will fix, well, it's supposed to. Plus message, so what's the problem here? Oh, I forgot a plus sign. There. So we can do it like that. So now what you'll notice the difference is if I put nothing in there, I now get two messages. This is mine. Height is a required field. All right. And the parameter name height is a required field. One of these is the system message. I think it's this one. And one of these is my message. So there's a lot of different ways that we can do this. So I can go in and I can add that. I'm just going to quickly put that in so you can see it in all of them. Now, originally, again, originally I did not have that, but I wanted to show you something that's different in these as opposed to the last one I showed you. I wanted to print out the system message. When I did this before and I had a format exception, I did not give it a name. I just did this, format exception, because I wasn't doing anything with the properties that are in here. But here I am. I'm printing out the system message for this. So again, what you see when I run this is, I already showed you this, but if there's nothing in there, I get the system message and my message. If there's something non-numeric in there, I get the system message and my message, and they look like they're basically the same. And then finally, if I put something out of range, I get the system message and my message. That's what I wanted you to understand from this. All right. So just to make it cleaner, because I think the output looks better, I'm going to just do it like this. Again, you could put them in, doesn't matter one way or the other. So again, playing computer, I come in here and I check for the presence or absence of my height. If it's absent, I'm going to throw an argument null exception. If it's present, then I'm going to check to see if it's a double. So I'm checking to see if the height is a double. If it's not, I'm going to throw a format exception. If I get down to here, it was a number. So I want to check, is it within range? Is it between 12 and 96? Probably would have been better off right here to say, check for presence or absence of height in height text box. That would have been a better thing to add there. All right. And then here, I'd say check for numeric or not for height in the height text box. And then down here, I'd say check for range for value of height in the height text box. And then to be good, because it's the way you should program, is I'm going to grab these same things and also put them in for weight. Now I got to change this to a W and this to a W. It really doesn't take time. I've heard students say this in the past. Well, I didn't really put in a lot of comments because it takes so much time. No, it doesn't. And I'm screwing it up while I'm doing this. So, it takes you an extra 5 minutes, but it's worth it. And again, you comment for two reasons. You comment for yourself, for your future self. So if you go back and you look in the future and you say, why did I do this? And I've done this many a time where I go back and I think, hey, there's a faster way of doing it. But I'm going to put a comment here because later I'm going to look at it and wonder why I did it that way. The other reason that you write comments are for other people. So when they see your code, they have an idea what you're trying to do. I've had this happen. Some of you have heard my horror stories. I have been called after I've been gone from a job for 5 years from people at jobs I used to be at, asking me for help on their code. I don't remember it anymore. So, all right. So last time, I'm coming through here. Is my height present? If it's not, do this. If it is present, see if it's a number. If it's not a number, do this. If it is a number, see if it's within range. If it's not within range, do this. If it is within range, make the same checks now for weight. Is weight present? Yes. Then skip this. If it's no, then do this. Then check to make sure weight's a number. If it is, skip this. Otherwise, do it. All right. If it was a number, check with it if it's within range between 1 and 777. If it is, skip this. If it's not, do this. So if I put in a valid number, so there is something in there, it is numeric, and it is within range for both height and for weight, then I get down to here. Now I can do those conversions. They have to succeed. So I could have done it as a try-parse, but there really is no sense in doing that. I've already done that. So I convert what was in the height text box and put it in height. I convert what's in the weight text box and put it in weight right here. Why did I do that? Because the BMI needs the height and the weight to do its thing. So I'm calling calculate BMI and I'm passing height and weight. These are their actual parameter names. Then when I get down to here, there it is. I give them formal parameter names. I call height H. I call weight W. Make sure when you do this, a lot of people will use the same names, but make sure that if I pass them in as in this order, height and weight, don't flip it down here to weight and height, or you're going to get wrong answers. All right. Now, just so you know this, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But if I come in here and type in BMI calculator, all right, not in Google, there's one. So now I can come in here and just say, okay, you're 6 feet tall and 0 inches, and you weigh 200 pounds. All right. And it shows where you are. So, I mean, I can go and run a bunch of values. So it says 6 feet, 200 pounds, your BMI should be 27.1. Let's try that with ours. So 72 inches, which is 6 feet tall, 200 pounds, 27.12. So they did it to 1 decimal place. I did it to 2. But you're considered to be overweight. All right. And then in the status, well, once I calculate the BMI, once I calculate it, the status needs to know what the BMI is. So I have to pass that in. And what is that? If it's less than 18.5, you're underweight. Otherwise, if it's less than 25, you're optimal weight. Otherwise, if you're less than 30, you're overweight. Otherwise, you're obese. The actual parameter name was BMI here, but down here when I used it, I just called it B. I could have called it BMI. It wouldn't have mattered. My clear button's the same. My exit button's the same. So I ran through that fairly quickly. My question for you is again, and if there are none, don't answer. Any questions on anything I've done here? It is expected then that for the pretest that you will take next Tuesday and for the hands-on test you'll take Wednesday, and if you're asked in any of the lab exercises, all right, to do work with using exception handling, that you will be able to do so. So let's take our last 5 minutes, because we're done in 5 minutes, and let's look at these. So this was chapter 6. Like I said, I started looking at it like, come on, there's way too much stuff for you to do. You don't have to do the fortune cookie. Already mentioned that. You will do this college admission one. Make sure, did I keep that open? No, I did not. So The ones, again, that you have to do are 4, 5, 6, and 9 here. So let's look. So this is number 4. This is that college admission test. If it does not say anything in here, if it does not, and I don't believe it does, about exception handling, you don't have to use it. You can if you want to. You don't have to. Then you're asked to do the one that counts the vowels. So you type something in there, you hit enter, and it counts how many vowels. Again, I believe it doesn't ask you to do any exception handling. You don't have to, but you can. Number 6, this is that painting estimate. All right, and again, you're not asked to do anything for exceptions. You're not asked to do anything for exceptions in Chapter 6 because we didn't get into exceptions until Chapter 7. All right, and then finally in here, this number 8, so you don't have to do 7 here, this credit card masker, but this one, I'd like you to, this one you don't have to do here, 8. This is the one for the desk, but number 9, this one for the bank, we're going to end up writing this together. So if you want to go and build the interface now, even if you don't want to rename your stuff, if you just want to build the interface, and again, what is this? Text box, button, label, text box, button. All right, you should be able to figure all that stuff out. And then just put in these methods. You don't have to fill in with code yet. It's fine. We'll get into that later, not right now. We're not going to worry about it right now. And if you go, well, then I'm not going to do it now, then don't. Totally fine. You're not turning that in anyway. You don't have to do this magic 8-ball either. All right. If I'm in the mood, I'll go show you the magic 8-ball one that I created. So if you want to see it, because it actually has the 8-ball and it gives you the answer with the 8-ball, etc. We're just not going to do that now. And that's everything for Chapter 6. Are there any questions on what labs you have to do for Chapter 6? Any questions? All right, then let's look at Chapter 7. There are only 3 problems. The first one I've already done for you. That's the BMI one. All right, so the first one, again, has already been done. You don't have to do it. The second one, I do want you to do. So that says create a GUI app to check if orders are valid. And this does give you some requirements that says you will have to use these. Don't worry about, what they have there. You could write them like that. But if you just want to use, the kind we've been using, like out of range and argument null and format exception, that's fine. You should come in here. These are all numeric. So for all 3 of these, you should check whether or not it's present. You should check whether or not it has a number in it, and you should check whether or not it's within this range. So you could make min item number and set it equal to 100, max item number, set it equal to 999. Min quantity to 1, max quantity to 12, min delivery days to 1, max delivery days to 30. All right? You don't have to do this decoder ring. Any questions on anything you have for labs for Chapter 6, labs for Chapter 7? You don't have to do any homework for 6 or 7. I've already given those to you. So any question on either of those labs assignments? Also, please remember, you have to do the written test for 6 and the written test for 7. All right? Anybody have any last questions? Because it is 10 and I said I'd let you go then. Any last questions? Anybody? All right, have a good weekend. I'm taking for granted then that you understand everything. And if you don't, you will email me. Last thing, promise, even if I go over by a minute. Sorry. So we are now done with this week. It wasn't a lab ball period. It's a lab for 1 hour and 50 minutes. But next week, which this will be changed in just a bit to this week. So Monday will be lab for the entire period, all 3 hours and 50 minutes. I will start up a team session. If it's 3 hours and 50 minutes of dead air, so be it. Tuesday will be your pretest. You will get 2 hours to work on it approximately, and I will spend approximately 2 hours going over it. Wednesday will be the hands-on test. All right. Thursday of next week, we'll go over Chapter 8, and a week from today, it'll be Chapter 9. Sounds like there were no other questions. Have a nice weekend. I will talk to you Monday. See you then.